As soon as the Southwest plane's wheels touched the ground at Sacramento International Airport, West Hadaway reached for his phone. "Hello, honey," he exclaimed pleasantly, when his wife Marlene responded, "I am back from San Diego. The plane has just landed. So as I'm packing my belongings into my car, I'll be home in about an hour. Yes, I love you too. Bye." Driving down I-80 into Fair Oaks, the accountant reflected on how much he dreaded work travel. West didn't get to do it very frequently, and when he did, it was generally for 2 or 3 nights, and he despised being gone from home for so long. Unfortunately, his boss, Edith Norton, disliked flying even more than he did, so he was the one who had to make the quarterly visits south to represent the Sacramento office. But for the next 3 months, he was done traveling. And maybe he was hoping that Marlene would want to start a family. She preferred to wait until her freelance art business was up and going, based on what he had observed of her work. West believed she was quite successful, so he hoped she would be more forthcoming. Working outside the home would make motherhood significantly simpler. At least, that was his reasoning. Driving down the smooth streets of Fair Oaks, past rows of immaculate ranches, he hummed a classic rock song he'd heard on the airport sound system. But the music rapidly faded when he pulled into his driveway and learned that the garage door opener was broken. Shaking his head in disdain, he parked in the driveway and headed to the front door. To his horror, the key would not fit into the lock. He looked to see if he'd accidentally jumbled up the keys, but it was actually the home key. After many more attempts, he gave up and rang the doorbell. Not a sound came from within. He tried again and got the same result. "Hello, honey, it's me," he shouted through the door. "Something is wrong with the lock. Will you let me in?" When there was no response, he rapped on the door with his knuckles, hoping to gain Marlene's attention. This time he heard movement inside. Then his wife's voice emerged from behind the door. "The reason your key does not work is that I replaced all of the locks, including the garage door code." He gazed at the entrance door in confusion. "I do not understand, Marlene. Let me in." "No, Wes, you cannot enter. You do not reside here anymore." "What do you mean? I don't live here anymore. Of course I live here. This is my house. What's happening?" There was a prolonged pause. Then he heard something faint. "It is about time." His wife's voice became louder. "Talk to whoever is behind you." Turning around, West noticed a faceless man in a baseball cap approaching him before he could speak. The stranger demanded, "Are you Wesley Hardaway?" "Yes, but who?" Before he could continue, the stranger pushed an envelope into his hands. "Wesley Hardaway, you've been served." But what is this?" "Sir, please find enclosed a copy of your wife's divorce petition." "Divorce?" "That's right, Mr. Hardaway. Furthermore, your wife has requested that a copy of the temporary restraining order be served on you. It is required that you remain at least 200 yards away from Mrs. Hardaway at all times." "What? That is absurd. Why should I?" West cut his words short, turned, and began beating on the front door. "Marlene, please allow me in. We need to discuss this." "What, sir? What seems to be the problem?" A deep voice sounded from behind him. West spun around to see a Sacramento cop standing on the sidewalk, one hand resting on the holster of his automatic weapon. Before West could offer an explanation, the stranger with the cap spoke up for him. "Mr. Hardaway has just been advised that a temporary restraining order has been issued against him. Officer, he must relocate at least 200 yards from his wife's home." With these statements, the bailiff approached the officer and gave him a copy of the temporary restraining order. The police officer in the black clothing briefly examined the form before turning to face West. "Sir, you will have to leave this site immediately. If you don't, I'll have to arrest you for violating a court order." He noticed the astonished expression on West's face. "Sir, do you comprehend what I've said?" He'd always been trained to respect authority. So West blinked many times before nodding uncertainly. "Yes, officer, I believe I understand." With those comments, he began walking down the sidewalk to his car, which was parked. His walk was that of a guy stunned by a hit to the head, hardly aware of his surroundings and what was going on in the presence of several neighbors. He drove the car out of the driveway, then slowly returned the way he had came. "What should I do now?" he asked, still dazed. "Mrs. Hardaway, you're safe now," the cop shouted through the door. "He's gone." "Thank you, officers," the reply arrived. "I'll just stay in the house for a while." The police officer nodded at the door, turned, and departed, just like the performer did. Marlene Hardaway stopped at the front entrance, taking a deep breath. But not relief, but elation. She exclaimed triumphantly, "I did it!" He never knew what had hit him. At the same time, she began to have fun with Man West. The next morning, West awoke early, bewildered and unable to remember where he was. He'd only slept for a few hours, and it took him long to realize he was sleeping on a strange bed in an unknown motel. The entire experience felt like a dream, or rather a nightmare. He spent the afternoon and evening attempting to figure out what had happened when he arrived home. When that failed, he began going over all he could remember from the previous days and weeks. It was frustrating. He couldn't think of anything that could have prompted his wife to behave in this way. He paused his idle thoughts to reflect on his current circumstances. The good news was that he was traveling and had his shaving gear with him. The bad news was that all of the clothes he had brought with him were either soiled or wrinkled. I can't go home and acquire new ones since I'm locked out. And then came the much more sad thought, this infernal restraining order. Even buying a clean suit will most likely require me to engage a lawyer. He glanced at the cheap clock on the nightstand and realized it was too early to call the law office. His empty stomach reminded him that he had not eaten dinner the night before. Food would have to be his top priority. He planned to find a fast food restaurant on the highway that opened early and eat a junk food breakfast while jotting down all the tasks he needed to perform. The earliest of these was 1. He was particularly dreading calling his supervisor to inform her that he would most likely be absent today. Edith Norton was the type of micromanager who believed it was her responsibility to supervise everything her employees did, even after sending him to San Diego. She disliked West's absence. He knew she wouldn't enjoy his absence on the first day he was due back. He returned to the motel and dialed Edith's number ahead of time, hoping to avoid voicemail. But indeed, she answered on the second ring, and her reaction was exactly what Wes had feared. He had planned to blame his absence on a cold, but she would not accept that explanation. He was obliged to accept the truth since he couldn't think of any other justification. She was dissatisfied with the headlines and continued to push him until he was compelled to describe the entire awful episode. Her response was less than empathetic. She kept stating, "You must have done something that caused your wife to act that way." The only way he could persuade his boss to let him stay was to tell her that without a change of clothes, he'd most likely stink up the entire flat. She snickered and admonished, but eventually agreed, warning him, "You'd better be at work tomorrow in clean clothes." He swore under his breath before abruptly hanging up. After finishing this unpleasant business, he went about locating a lawyer. There were plenty of law firms in California's state capital, but the majority of the larger companies did not even offer family law services. While skimming through web listings, he decided to hunt for the top family law attorney in Sacramento. However, when he called the suggested firm, he discovered that Marlene had already contacted them. West tried many more recommended firms with little success. They couldn't even meet with him for a few weeks. Finally, desperate, he sought for a tiny firm, hoping that its attorneys would not be too busy. He contacted Winston Samuels and Associates first, and he was glad to hear from the receptionist that Mr. Samuels had some free time that afternoon. He scheduled an appointment, but after hanging up the phone, he wondered why the lawyer was not busier. Nonetheless, he chose to act. He told himself, "I need to find some help right away." He completed the first 2 tasks. He sat on an uncomfortable motel chair and thought about it while glancing at his crumpled clothes. He didn't feel like using the motel laundry room. He decided it would be easier to buy a change of clothes for tomorrow. This prompted him to check his bank accounts. He was relieved to discover that his last paycheck had been transferred into his account while he was out of town. Then he recalled his meeting with Winston Samuels. "I wonder how much it will cost." He promptly examined the money market account that he and Marlene had jointly managed and was shocked to discover that there was just $1 left in it. "Heck, I understand her taking half, but cleaning out the entire account is simply unacceptable," he raged. He eventually calmed himself enough to include that on the list of topics to talk with the new lawyer. The next assignment was to drive to the Arden Target and shop. He was able to find jeans and a shirt appropriate for the office. He then put socks and underwear. After putting his items in a large red Target bag, he decided to drive home. He drove slowly along the block, peering into the windows for signs of life, but saw none. He drove, unhappily, back to the motel, pausing only to get more fast food. Following a lonely lunch in his hotel room, West headed downtown to the address of the law company he had contacted. The firm was housed in an old office building a few blocks from the Capitol Mall. After reviewing the directory in the lobby, he boarded the elevator to the 6th floor and proceeded to a glass door with an old-fashioned gilt sign reading, "Winston Samuels and Associates." When he entered and introduced himself, the receptionist urged him to seat down before disappearing through the door. A few minutes later, she emerged and requested him to follow her. The woman led West to a corner office and opened the door marked Winston Samuels, attorney at law. The man who shook his hand appeared to be well into his 50s, with short gray hair slicked back and wire-rimmed glasses dangling over his ears. West believed he looked experienced, encouraged by the lawyer. West swiftly detailed what had happened at his house before handing him the documents the process server had given him. Samuels went through them slowly before focusing on West. "Very good, young man. What do you want me to do for you?" West gave him a pleading look. "Maybe you can get the restraining order lifted. If I could meet Marlene, I'd try to convince her out of it. She's lost her way, and I'm not sure what's wrong." Samuels linked his fingers and turned to look out the window. After a few seconds, he returned to his new customer and leaned forward again. "If I may, I would want to share my thoughts with you." West nodded, and the man started listing his thoughts on his fingers. "First, in California, you cannot stop a divorce if the other partner wants one. To put it frankly, your wishes do not matter. Second, by shutting you out of the house, your wife has communicated that she does not wish to debate her decision with you. Third, she reinforced her demands by obtaining a restraining order which effectively prevents her from meeting you unless she is accompanied by her attorney. Fourth, by confiscating your joint financial account, she is attempting to coerce you into consenting to the divorce as soon as possible. We will eventually reclaim your portion of the monies, but she hopes you will feel the financial strain sooner, particularly given your increased living expenditures. Remember that even if you don't reside in the house, you are still responsible for the mortgage, utilities, and other costs associated with its upkeep. Finally, as you stated, your wife is not off the hook. She had been planning this for a long time. How do you know this?" West murmured something. Samuels glanced at him calmly. "Obtaining a restraining order is not something you can accomplish in a day or two. She had to employ an attorney a while ago. It would take time for her counsel to draft the motion and bring it to the judge for consideration and approval. Similarly, it required time to engage a bailiff and replace the house's locks. Obviously, she had everything precisely planned out in advance." West slipped into a chair. "She never intimated to me that something was wrong." He shook his head in amazement. "She even declared her love to me when I called from the airport." The older man gave no response. West sighed. "So, I guess I'll get divorced then." He shook his head in anger. "But I still want to know why. Why did you end our marriage without ever addressing it with me?" Samuel shook his head. "I can't say anything about it, but I might be able to suggest you to someone who can. Our organization often uses the services of a detective agency. They're efficient, effective, and fairly priced. Additionally, they are convenient. After all, they are on the same floor of the building as us. I'd be pleased to contact them on your behalf if you choose. You're absolutely right, I will. I want to know what's going on." The lawyer answered the phone and asked the receptionist to contact him. A few minutes later, she knocked on the door and looked inside. "Trevor can see Mr. Hadaway as soon as you two finish." Half an hour later, West was standing outside the Sacramento Confidential Investigations office. He noted that the entrance featured the same gilt lettering as the attorney's office. He reluctantly knocked on the door, and very immediately, a trim, middle-aged man in a tracksuit and slacks opened it. "Come inside, Mr. Hardaway." The man greeted him. "I have been awaiting you. I'm Trevor Samuels, and I lead the Sky Division. Nice to meet you." West responded graciously, shaking the man's hand. Then he paused. "Did you mention Trevor Samuels? That's the same name as the investigator who grinned." "Yeah. I am Winston's brother. We both attended law school." But after he earned his law degree and I received my detective's badge after leaving the police force, we formed a mutually beneficial alliance. Seeing Wes's hesitancy, he hurried to continue. But don't let that deter you. I spent 25 years working as a detective in San Francisco before venturing out on my own, so I know what I'm doing. Now return to my office and let's discuss. The detective listened silently as West presented his narrative. Your brother says, I can't stop this divorce, but he wants to know what's going on. It's terrible enough that your entire existence has been turned upside down. Being ambushed like this only adds salt to the wound. It's so humiliating that she locked me in the house and issued me a protective order. I want to know why she did all of it. The detective nodded wisely. That is something I can surely comprehend. And I'm sure we can tell you why she did what she did. But I don't need to look into anything to figure out why she took that protection order. Assuming you are honest with me and have never hit or hurt her. No, absolutely not. I'd never do it, West mumbled. In such situation, I am confident your wife is building the groundwork for her future at your expense. When her friends inquired about her divorce, West gave him a bewildered expression. The investigator stated, All she has to say is, I don't want to talk about it, but I had to issue a protective order against West. From now on, you are the evil guy. Everyone will assume they understand why she locked you up and filed for divorce. Your reputation will suffer, but she, the Holy of Holies, will never speak badly of you. West. His jaw dropped open. I cannot believe she could be that cruel. Trevor nodded. Mr. Hathaway, she put things up quite cleverly. Now the only question is, why? I believe I will be able to answer your issue quite fast, possibly within a week. That would be excellent. West answered by shaking his hand for the remainder of the day. West followed the lawyer's advice to secure his financial affairs, but the knowledge he had previously learned was still denied to him. The next morning, West arrived at work at the normal hour, but was greeted in the foyer by Edith Norton. Mr. Hardaway, I see you have decided to grace us with your presence this morning. Between slacking off at the San Diego conference and spending time on your shady personal life, you have a lot of work on your desk. I hope you'll be more diligent in reducing it. God, how? I despise that woman, he thought, but just nodded, rushing to his cubicle after missing lunch and working hard, where he had actually done a considerable amount of damage to the backlog of work. But his concentration vanished in an instant. Trevor Samuels called late at night. We had a fortuitous break with our researcher and discovered some material that I believe you would find quite intriguing. Can you return tomorrow and familiarize yourself with it? Cannot you tell me now? I do not mean to be cryptic, West, but our protocol is to always present our findings in person. Okay. West hesitantly agrees. I'll attempt to schedule some extra spare time. If you don't hear from me, I'll stop by first thing in the morning. Miss. Norton proved to be as hostile as he had expected, Mr. Hathaway. I don't care what happens in your home life. You cannot simply take off work anytime you want. I've been generous with you thus far, but if you insist on taking tomorrow off, it will count against your vacation. Is this understood? Yes, ma'am, he responded sullenly, unconcerned about losing a vacation day. What do I care? The trip I had planned with Marlene is not going to happen anyway. Trevor Samuels was in a good mood when West arrived at the workplace the following morning. We are in luck, he informed his client. Come on in, and I will show you what I am talking about. He walked West over to his workstation and flipped the computer screen around so West could see it. The detective clicked on a file, revealing a bizarre, distorted image of West. His house from across the street showed on TV. Don't worry about the photo, Trevor reassured him. The Fish Islands are what give the photograph an unusual appearance. However, you will be able to see all of the necessary details a moment later. A silver BMW Y8 emerged on the left side of the screen. The automobile made a sharp turn into West's driveway. The garage door opened, and the automobile pulled in. The garage door closed a moment later, and the image went dark after 30 seconds. West gave the detective a perplexed look. What am I looking at? Trevor clicked his mouse, and the scene reappeared. Then he stopped it. Look at the date and time, he replied, pointing to the screen. That was yesterday, 25 to 12, West replied, still unsure. That is not your wife's automobile, is it? Asked Trevor. She drives a Honda. And suddenly it struck him. It appears that she had a guest. Exactly. Who has a remote with a new code for the garage? He clicked the mouse again, and West saw the garage door open before a silver automobile pulled out and drove away. The time was 1:32 p.m. that afternoon. Acid started to build up in the Western stomach. I imagine it didn't take her long to make a new friend. Trevor was not done. He fiddled with the mouse, selecting another file. When it started playing, West questioned if he was watching the prior video. The same sports car appeared in the same direction and drove into Hardaway's garage again. West looked at Winston, and the investigator pointed to the timestamp. West drew 2 breaths. He screamed, "That happened 3 weeks ago." Trevor nodded thoughtfully. "I am afraid it was." "How often?" asked West, almost terrified. "We have documents from the past 6 months, West. We have not had time to go through them all, but it appears that your wife had lunch with the same visitor 2 or 3 times per week during that period." Now the acid in my stomach had changed. How could I have been so blind? He turned to face the detective. "Where did you obtain all of this?" he demanded. Trevor slumped back in his chair. "There is a neighborhood watch organization in your community. Some neighbors, such as the couple across the street from you, have expensive doorbells with motion-activated cameras. Everything they observe gets saved in a cloud database. Most of it is harmless, like as deliveries, people strolling by, and so on. But every now and then one of them busts a porch pirate or a cheating housewife." West gritted his teeth. "Unfortunately, we never got to see the bastard." Trevor said nothing back. Instead, he clicked the mouse again, bringing up another file, this time as the sports car approached West his driveway. The door took its time opening. Trevor clicked his mouse and the image froze. He then pressed another key, and the image on the screen zoomed in. The detective extended a finger. "There's a license plate. I do not recognize it. I've got a contact at the DMV." Trevor spoke and hit the button again. A California driver's license showed on the screen, along with a photo of a handsome man staring blankly into the camera. "Does the name John Mackenzie mean anything to you?" he asked. West mumbled, "Son of a bitch." "Marlene works hard for his advertising agency. I bet that's how they met her." He jumped to his feet. "I am going to go dispute with him right now." Wait, Trevor said, reaching out and gripping Wes's wrist with a startling strength. "This is precisely why I insist on delivering the information in person. Sit down and let's talk about this before you do something dumb." West scowled angrily at the man before taking a deep breath and slowly sitting back down. "That's better," the detective said calmly. "Now listen to me, West. For all I know, you're a former Marine who can kick Mackenzie's ass hard. Perhaps he's a seasoned killer who placed you in the hospital. In either case, you'll demonstrate that your wife was correct to request a restraining order. Your reputation is already fragile. Don't damage it forever." Wes peered at him closely before slowly bowing his head in submission. "I am not a fighter. If I went to Mackenzie's office, I would probably leave feeling worse." He rolled his eyes. "Besides, Marlene would probably enjoy the idea of 2 men battling over her." He stared at Samuels again. "But I need to do something. If I don't, I'll let Marlene win. Furthermore, you claim my reputation is already at peril. I cannot let the 2 of them get away with this. Look, Wes, I understand your feelings, but there are other options for getting what you want that do not include jail time." "Yeah, like what?" "I spoke with my IT expert, Dash Daniels, about your case. She is quite knowledgeable in social and new media. She has a few suggestions. I believe you should listen to her and decide what you think." West regarded him skeptically. "I do not know." "Come on. She's just down the hallway. Allow her to tell you what's on her mind. That way, if you don't like it, you have nothing to lose." Trevor led a reluctant West down the corridor to a door adorned with a square of wood reading Antisocial Network. "Ignore it," the detective replied swiftly. "It's simply her strange sense of humor." He glanced at his client. "I understand she's a little strange, but don't let that put you off." With those comments, he knocked on the door and stepped inside, followed by West. Wes's initial thought was that he had entered a college dormitory. In the center of the room stood a decrepit wooden desk with many flat-screen monitors, one of which was the largest Wes had ever seen. Against one wall, a mattress was heaped high with books and magazines. The dark gray walls were adorned with posters of famous people, the majority of whom Wes did not identify. But the most strange thing about the room was its inhabitant. A tall, slim girl of unknown age dressed in tight black high-waisted pants and a black sleeveless t-shirt that showed her midriff. Exotic tattoos decorated the sleeve of her left arm. She wore dark, gothic makeup that contrasted with her hair, which was colored pure white and curled with gel to stand up in loose curls. Except for her right ear, which was trimmed short to the west, she resembled a Japanese anime character. While he tried not to look at her, she extended her hand for a handshake. "I'm Dash Daniels," she said in a quiet voice that didn't seem to fit her features. "You must be Chitty." When West heard her comments, he instantly reciprocated the handshake. "What?" he asked. "If your soon-to-be ex-wife is cheating, you are also cheating," she explained nonchalantly. "Now, Dash," Trevor interjected, "behave yourself." Before leaving, he gazed at West with almost begging eyes. "Just listen to her." "Okay." Then he was gone. West turned around, scared, but Dash invited him to the futon. "Okay, take a seat and tell me all about it." She then sat on the opposite end of the futon, crossed her legs, and West observed she was barefoot. As soon as he sat down, she started telling him, "I don't usually do this kind of work, but I enjoy crooks, so I'm prepared to assist you. My father has already taught me the essential information." "But wait a minute. Is Trevor your father?" "Yes." She smiled bitterly. "And Winston is my uncle. I bet you didn't realize it was a family company. Anyway, I've heard that your ex has put you in a tough spot. If we're going to pass this forward to her, I need to know everything she did, what you did, and how you feel about it. Heart and soul. Do you understand what I mean?" "Not really," West admitted. "And you'll have to pardon me, but I have no idea what you do or how a computer job can benefit me." "No offense," she smiled. "No offense was taken. As you've heard, I conduct a lot of online research for my father and uncle. But I truly adore social media, reputation management, and changing opinions. It is what you require if you wish to counter what your ex is attempting to achieve." He objected uncertainly. "Look," she said patiently, "do you use the internet frequently? Do you have a Facebook profile and a Twitter account, upload videos to TikTok, watch YouTube channels, sell items on eBay, follow your friends on Instagram? Any of that?" "No, not really. I mean, not once." Despite her black lipstick, she smiled beautifully. He decided, "Okay, let's go over social media for dummies." The truth is that a large and quickly expanding part of the population is nearly always online. That is where they obtain their news. That's where they meet others. That is where they find enjoyment. Everything is invisible to those like you. But for those who do, the reach and impact are massive. She could see the hesitation in his expression. "Do you believe I am exaggerating? There are folks on YouTube who make $6,000 per year playing video games. There are many of tiny businesses who do not have stores or factories but make a lot of money selling products on Amazon. There are large corporations whose most influential spokespersons are not movie stars but internet personalities. It goes on and on. There are ideas, pictures, sounds, and words that pervade society, and unless ancient media covers them, you'll never hear about them. In contrast, there are celebrities and public figures who are acclaimed or loathed only on the internet, and their success or failure is determined by how the Twitterverse reacts to them. If we're talking about only one medium, but what does all of this mean for me? To tell you the truth, I am not sure yet, but my duty is to capture the attention of this invisible audience and persuade them to your side. If I succeed, your ex will be powerless. Can you actually do that? We will see. But if you're prepared to try again, I'd like you to tell me your story once again, but this time, concentrate on how you felt, what you were thinking, and how you responded. These are the levers that influence people's emotions, not the facts." Wes hesitated for a moment before shrugging. "What do I have to lose?" For the next hour, he presented his narrative from a unique, often painful perspective. "Begin from the minute your plane landed," Dash asked. "Tell me what you were thinking and saying when you called her." As he recalled the events, he relived the entire gamut of feelings he had experienced and continued to experience. It was terrible, yet he found the strength to let it all out. Throughout his narration, the young woman took copious notes and asked clarifying questions. When he reached the present, she went back and examined what he had written. When she looked at him, all humor vanished from her face. "I think I know how we should handle this. But first, Wes, I need to ask you something. How strong are you? He shook his head in confusion. You're asking how much weight I can lift? No, she said, still not smiling. I mean, how strong is your ego? How well you can handle criticism? How crucial others' perceptions of you are? That is, the strength of personality. I guess I'm just as powerful as everyone else. She gave him a stern look. Well, I suppose you'll find out. I do not comprehend. She slumped back against the back of the futon. Every good story has what's known as an arc. She sketched a half circle in the air with her finger as an illustration. The primary character begins here. Then something unexpected occurs, and the character arc begins to fall until it reaches a climax, a low point. Only then will the situation begin to improve. The audience wishes to cheer for the protagonist's achievement, but the only way to gain their support is to portray the character suffering. We need to visualize your storyline, Wes. I'm still not sure what you're talking about, but if it means a little suffering, I'm already there. A melancholy smile formed in the corner of her mouth for a second. We will see. Then she sat up, assuming the businesslike demeanor that only a goth geek could. Okay, here's what will happen next. You must be ready to embark on a tour with me on short notice. I will call you when the time comes. Can you do that? My boss will be furious if I do this during business hours, but I'm already on her bad guy list, so maybe a bit more won't matter. Great, she exclaimed, jumping to her feet. I'm going to enjoy this. She grinned and shook his hand. I despise cheats. Wes went out of the building, attempting to recall everything that had happened since he'd entered. Why did I deserve all of this? He grumbled. And what am I getting myself into now? A day later, Wes was at his desk eating lunch when the phone rang. It was Dash. Can you pick me up? She asked. We have a chance now, and I'm not sure when the next one will come along. My boss is going to hate me, he said solemnly, but that is nothing new. I can stop by your office in 20 minutes. Miss Norton was irritated by Wes's request, but because he had a lot of work piled up, she reluctantly consented. Remember, all of your personal time will be taken from your vacation. She yelled at his back as he moved towards the door. When he arrived at the building he had subconsciously come to refer to as Samuel's building, Dash was waiting for him on the sidewalk, wearing leggings, a white top, and flip-flops. You have a new closet, he joked, but she ignored him. We're heading to your place, she said, and he gave her a harsh look. You know I can't be there, especially while Marlene is still home. Don't worry about that, she assured him. My father saw her go right before I contacted you. He will keep an eye on us while we are there. Okay. So what are we going to do? Break into the house? Nothing really dramatic. You must attempt to reproduce the crime as closely as possible. What's the crime? What happened when you arrived home from the airport? Okay. So what will you do? He inquired. I'm going to film the entire affair, she casually informed him. What? Why? It's simple, Wes. We need to provide your followers a backstory before we sell your plot. He shook his head in confusion. Fans. I don't have any fans. She grinned. Not yet. But don't worry about it now. Right now, I'd like you to tell me how you felt at every stage throughout this interaction. Tell me. What emotions did you experience? So when I pulled up to our house, I was undoubtedly excited to see Marlene. Then, when I couldn't get through the door, I became agitated and enraged. And when she told me she'd locked me out, I was startled. I believe transitioning so swiftly from perplexity to despair put me in shock. I couldn't figure out what was happening to me. I was absolutely stunned. I couldn't even decide what to do. Everything else, including the bailiff, the restraining order, and the police, only added to my uncertainty and misery. Wonderful, she exclaimed. Now, when we arrive at your house, I'd like you to tell us exactly what happened. We must see all of the emotions you just expressed to me. Do you believe you can do it? I'm not sure, he said doubtfully. I'm not a particularly excellent actor. I do not want you to act, she informed him. I want you to repeat what you did and remember how you felt. That is all. Do not worry, I will lead you through it. Now give me your cell phone. She did something with it before reaching into her pocket and pulling out an unfamiliar device. Take this Bluetooth earpiece. I can use it to communicate with you while you review what happened. They arrived at his neighborhood, which appeared deserted until he drove into his driveway. Dash assisted him in removing the earpiece and carefully hitting it out of sight. She then called him from her cell phone. She nodded quietly for him to get out of the car and walk to the front door. When he looked back, Dash was on the sidewalk filming him with a second phone. "Do not look at me," she said. "Try walking into your residence like you did before." West turned away and walked out onto the porch, trying unsuccessfully to open the home with the key. He felt himself remembering that day, and his attitude darkened. "Ring the doorbell, West." He heard and clicked the button, recalling how furious and bewildered he was. "Now knock on the door." He listened and hammered hard on the door with his knuckles, frustrated at not being allowed to enter his own home. "Marlene is yelling at you through the door. She claims she changed the locks and then drops a bombshell. She wants a divorce." West staggered back, recalling how astonished he had been. He remembered not only what she said, but also the malice in her voice. He tried to oppose her, but she didn't listen. "There is a bailiff following you." A voice in his ear prompted him, and as he turned west, Trevor Samuels, wearing a low-crowned cap, approached him with a sheaf of papers in his hands. He handed West one copy and began reading from it. The typed text made no sense, but West stared at it as if it were his death sentence. He turned towards the front entrance. He heard it pound and began hammering on the door with the heel of his palm. "The cop is instructing you to leave West." He glanced around, but there was no one there. In his mind, however, the frightening policeman's comments sounded like a judge's decision. He dropped his hands to his sides, bent his head, let out a dejected sigh, and began to walk back down the walkway in front of the home. His legs were so heavy that he fought to get up. His idyllic little world had been broken, and all he saw was anguish and despair in front of him. "Go to the car, Dash," his voice reminded him, and he slowly walked to the car door without looking up. He climbed in and lowered himself onto the seat. "You were fantastic, Wes," Dash said as he entered the passenger seat. "I got some really good shots." He started the engine and began driving out of his area and back to downtown. "But there wasn't a cop," he explained. "We don't need him." She waved him off. He was not in the image. "Besides, no one knows about him but you and Marlene." She stretched out to squeeze his shoulder. "That was incredible, Wes. You were very into it. Can we not discuss now?" The pain in his words was palpable, and she snatched her fingers away. She glanced out the window for the rest of the journey. She did, however, cast an oblique glance toward him on several occasions. By the time they returned to Samuel's building, she had already made her decision. "Park in the parking lot," she instructed him. When he gave her a quizzical look, she replied, "You're coming with me." She brought him inside her office, motioning for him to sit on the futon. She then left through the door, reappearing a minute later with 2 bottles of beer. She sat down next to him, and they drank quietly. When they were done, she took 2 more bottles, only after they had drunk virtually the entire second bottle. "Did she try to chat to him? Are you genuinely into this?" she asked. He looked off into the horizon before sighing. "Yes, I suppose I did. Everything came back to me from there. Shock, confusion, and sorrow. I suppose I never dealt with it completely." She nodded. "I'm sorry for putting you through that, West, but your reaction will have a significant impact on the viewers." He took another sip and gazed at her. "I still don't understand how any of this is going to help. I'm going to utilize this video to begin the downward slope of your plot. Then I will send you even below. Only then can we bring it all to a pleasant conclusion." His face turned bitter. "So what you're guaranteeing me is blood, sweat, and tears," she said, glowering. "But keep in mind that the British will eventually lose everything. True, but only because they had America on their side." She nodded and grinned even more widely. "Yeah, you've got me on your side. It would not be a fair contest." Then she got up. "But that can only happen if you go immediately and let me do my work. Okay, Dash, I'm not sure why, but I have faith in you." He stood up as well. "Anyway, thank you for the beer." She moved closer and, to his astonishment, gave him a short hug. "Wes, hang in there. I know it's difficult right now, but things will improve, I promise." As he drove back to the motel, he began to feel more hopeful. His cheerful attitude did not persist until the following morning. Edith Norton was nowhere to be found, and the daily work was soon exhausting him. The only bright spot was Dash's call in the middle of the afternoon. "Can you come over after work? I have something you'll want to see." When he entered his office, the remaining 2 hours of work seemed to fly by. She put him down in one of the chairs behind her desk and unfolded a large monitor in front of him so he could see what I was doing. "You'll need to watch some YouTube first," she explained. "Have you heard of Gossip Girl Journey's Back Fence?" "No. Should I have?" "You certainly should have. Girl has one of YouTube's most popular channels right now. Let me show you. And commercial for beauty items." Appeared on the screen, and Dash waited expectantly for an opportunity to go ahead. When she did, the screen instantly displayed an image of a middle-class backyard encircled by a white picket fence. The boring song of a vast orchestra sounded a sign in the sky, "Crimson Gossip Girl," outside his back fence. The picture abruptly moved to a set featuring a desk with the same white fence in front of it. Behind it sat an unusually dressed hostess, wearing an unmistakable 1950s-style blonde wig. Her clothing was from the same era. "It's good to see you. They killed the woman. I'm Dirty, Gossip Girl. And I just found out the most juicy gossip ever. Now I'll tell you all about it." With such words, she started publishing gossip, people's life tales, fashion and beauty suggestions, product recommendations, and so on. Behind her, the screen displayed charts and films detailing each part. After a few moments, Dash stopped the application. "Okay, I believe you understand the concept. What are your thoughts? Is this her hobby?" "A hobby?" Dash sneered derisively. "This is her full-time job. Can she do it for a living? Advertisers pay quite generously for appearances on popular YouTube shows. How?" "So, let me phrase it this way. The host of a show with 1 million members can earn slightly more than $50,000 per year." He whistled. $50,000? Not bad. She grinned. Last year, Gossip Girl Journey's Back Fence had an average of approximately 100 million members. How many? 100 million. Wait, does that imply she earns $5 million every year? He paused, taken aback at the amount. Dash moved around the table and sat in another chair in front of the big screen. "Here is the thing. To be successful, a show like this requires a steady stream of content. Obviously, the majority of it comes from publicists, advertising, and promoters. But Gertie needs more if she wants to keep all of her subscribers. That is where people like myself come to the rescue. I'll occasionally propose a story that she might find useful. If she loves it, her show will have a significant impact on her target audience. That's exactly what I plan to do with your narrative. Push it towards her so we can gain your attention. So why is she interested in my story? It's simple," she explained. "I'm going to make you the embodiment of every heartless man who has ever abandoned a wife or girlfriend. What? I am a quitter, not a dumpster diver. Not in my version. Here's the footage I put together as well as my suggested script for Birdie. Take a peek." With those remarks, she clicked on the file, and a black and white video of Neighborhood Watch appeared on the computer, exactly as Dash's father had shown West. Only this time, it was as his automobile pulled into his driveway. Dash began reading. "How many of you gals have been dumped by a boyfriend or kicked out of your marriage by an unfeeling spouse? How many of you had wished?" On the screen, the shoes were reversed. West noticed him beating on the door, to no result. In Sacramento, California, the lady was clearly fed up with her husband, so she changed the locks and kicked him out. The scenario transitioned to a view from the sidewalk, clearly captured with a handheld camera. The clip started with a lengthy shot before zooming in on a devastated West. Look at the expression on his face. He can't believe his wife can do this. Now watch this guy shrink when the bailiff presents him the divorce papers, dash red on the screen, and his expression lowers in obvious dread. And now, for the great finale, dash red. The embarrassed husband must make the long, shameful walk to his car and out of her life. It's good to watch a man have to suffer for once. The screen was nearly hard to watch as West dashed down the driveway. Dash looked up from the script to see West's reaction. She had figured he wouldn't be pleased, but the expression on his face surprised her. "That was the most humiliating thing I'd ever witnessed," he exclaimed. "Do we really have to do it that way?" She patted his arm. "I apologize, West, but this is the only way." He shook his head skeptically. "Okay, since you say so, you didn't mention any names. I hope nobody recognizes me." The young woman turned away without saying anything. The next day at work, his phone beeped late at night with a message from Dash that read, "You are live on Gertie. Fasten your seatbelt. The flight is about to become choppy in the final hour of the day." West had kept one eye on his work and the other on the rest of the office workers, but he had seen no signs that anything was wrong. Edith Norton did, however, give him a glimpse as he left at 5:30 p.m. But that was not rare. Relieved, he went to visit Dashiell's office to check how things were going. He caught her in her seat. She constantly seemed to be there and inquired about the newest news. Gurney enjoyed her job. Dashiell informed him joyfully. She utilized it exactly like you saw yesterday. However, she did the voicing instead of me. More crucially, she told me she had already received a positive reaction. She winked at him. I believe a lot of ladies like watching an inconsiderate man struggle. But I am not like that, he protested. Yes, but they don't realize it. Anyway, it hasn't been too long. And you've already started spreading around the internet. Someone on TikTok grabbed a screenshot of your face and shared it on their network. And now it's rapidly spreading. I'm also seeing posts about it on my Facebook pages, which suggests it's definitely gaining traction. She noticed the look of concern on his face. But don't worry, on the internet you're referred to as humiliated husband. He murmured cynically, That's exactly the kind of nickname I was expecting. Okay, so what comes next? We'll wait another day to see how this develops before moving on to step 2. What is phase 2? She stated nonchalantly. That's where we'll turn into a true bastard. He shivered. Does it have to be the absolute worst? You can't get up unless you've fallen first. I don't believe Newton stated that. Yes, but Sir Isaac was unfamiliar with the internet. He spent the remainder of the evening in a depressed state, and it took him a while to fall asleep in the tight motel room. As a result, he overslept and had to rush to work before the start of the day. As he entered the lobby, he spotted the receptionist staring at him as he walked down the corridor to his cubicle. He observed her swiftly take up the phone and make a call. What was that? He asked, sitting down at his desk. The oddity just grew worse with each passing day. He saw an unusually high number of employees passing by his cubicle. Every now and then, he heard sarcastic remarks and muted laughs. Finally, right before lunch, a supervisor burst into the office. I'm not sure what you're letting yourself in for, Wes Hardaway, but this is starting to take away from the work. Edith, all I'm doing is working on the Wilson case. I'm talking about all of your internet bullshit. Putting your personal troubles in front of everyone is not very professional. Ma'am, I am not sure what you are referring about, but I will have that file available for your review by 2 p.m. Very well, but please email it to me instead of bringing it to me. That last barb will take me an hour to get, judging by the pace you move around town. She turned and went away, making me less concerned that the Neanderthal computer would see me. This awful tale has to be everywhere. He grumbled. For the remainder of the day, he kept his nose out of his work and tried to be as discreet as possible. It did not help. When he needed to use the restroom one day, he noticed a group of co-workers gathered in the corridor. One of them was a summer intern who had been shoved by another. We approached Wes nervously. Mr. Hardaway, some folks want me to ask if your initials are HH. West glanced at him in disbelief. The entire company burst out laughing, and all Wes had to do was quickly escape to the relative safety of the lavatory. Wes rushed out of the office at 5 p.m., past the other employees to his car. Then he drove directly to the Samuels building and rushed over to Dash. What have you done to me? He requested when she allowed him in. I have been going to hell all day. All of the employees recognize me, including my employer. I am not surprised. She responded easily. Wes, you have achieved an extremely rare result. You have become a meme. A what? A meme is a picture on the internet that people identify with a certain notion or emotion. The video of you going away embarrassed has already been picked up and used thousands of times. Wes, you are the poster boy for a man who has been humiliated by a woman. He dropped into his chair and wrapped his arms about his head. Dash approached and knelt in front of him. Wes, I have to tell you, things are going to become worse. Significantly bad. Tomorrow, girl, you'll learn that you've been served with a protective order. Do you know what people will think then? When he groaned, she cupped his face in her hands and peered into his eyes. I know this will be difficult for you, but I assure you that the lower you fall now, the higher you will soar when it is over. Right now, you just need to be strong. Can you do that? God, Dash, I will try. I don't really have any other options now, do I? Marlene, a little before noon the following day. Jack Mackenzie pushed his silver BMW into the Hadaway driveway and parked it in the garage, making sure the garage door was locked. He entered the house and searched for his lover. When he discovered Marlene, she was seated at her computer, frowning. "Have you seen that?" she inquired, pointing to the screen where Dirty Gossip Girl was depicting West, fleeing down the trail that had become notorious. How the hell did they acquire that video? He looked over his shoulder at her and smiled. Probably one of your roommates was walking around and recorded it on her phone. He began stroking her shoulders. Who cares about that? Truthfully, it makes West appear like a complete moron. And you are the clever one for getting rid of him. I guess you're correct. She nodded. But I can't help but feel terrible for the poor jerk. Look at the sorrow on West's face. Wes had a better start the next day. He was still being glanced at as he walked to work, but the novelty of the situation seemed to have faded. I will get over it, he decided. But his relative calm was disrupted. Mid-morning, he received another text from Dash. Gurney's second installment is now live. You are the main subject. Maintain your composure in the face of fear. He went to YouTube and located the Gossip Girl channel, eagerly awaiting the show's commercial and introduction. He watched in terror as the influential YouTube user began to ruin his life, with video of him hammering on the front door playing in the background. Girl, he declared triumphantly. You've all seen my previous post about the humiliated husband, but his story has taken a new, darker turn. The scene transitioned to a process server delivering West paperwork. Turns appears West received more than just divorce papers. What is the true bombshell? Hubby received a restraining order. An official paper came on the screen, filling it completely. The only discernible words at the top were restraining order. And that is not all. Gurley said, this order requires our humiliated husband to stay at least 200 yards away from his wife at all times. It doesn't take much imagination to figure out what could be going on to necessitate such protection. There is no word yet on whether charges have been brought, but we will keep a watch on this one. All we can say to the wife at this point is that we hope she is safe. And to the embarrassed husband, all we can say is goodbye. And we pray you get what you deserve, along with all of the other wife-beaters. My God, Gurley may place a bounty on my head. I had to get out of here. Normally, there was a clear amount of background noise in his office, people chatting on their phones, office machines humming, and people wandering down the halls. However, the sound West heard outside his cubicle was more of a low, ominous growl. It brought him to a stop. He looked up and noticed several co-workers whispering among themselves, shaking their heads and casting accusatory stares at him. He continued to observe them every few minutes, trying to find a space through which he could slip away unnoticed. However, there was none. On the contrary, the audience seemed to grow. He tried to focus on his work, but people kept passing by the entrance to his cabin, muttering insults under their breath, which he was bound to hear. Suddenly, the commotion subsided as the crowd divided. Edith Norton entered his cubicle. Mr. Hardaway, I warned you the other day that unprofessional behavior has a detrimental impact on our workplace. Normally, your personal life is your responsibility, but not when it involves abusing your wife. But I've never even touched Marlene, he said. So why did she decide to pursue legal action? The woman demanded. Why should you have to stay 200 yards away from her all the time or risk being arrested? I'm really not sure why. Enough, she exclaimed, startling him. This company has no tolerance for spousal abuse, Mr. Hardaway. You'd know if you spent less time surfing the web and more time reading the employee handbook. However, ignorance of company policies is not an excuse. You are hereby terminated. You are no longer an employee of this firm. Effective today. Wes's mouth dropped open, but she wouldn't let him finish. You will be paid for the work you have completed. You will also receive a separate check for 2 weeks' salary as severance pay. I need you to leave the premises immediately. Leave everything except your jacket and leave. If you have any personal belongings, they will be delivered to you in due course. Ralph will escort you out. She nodded, and a sturdy security guard entered the booth. Mr. Hardaway, will we have any problems? Wes was shocked. He shook his head, then allowed the guard to take his hand and lead him away. Behind him, the murmur of voices became increasingly louder. When he got in his car, he sat behind the wheel, dazed. A strong knock on the glass forced him to look up and see Ralph, who was pointing to the parking lot exit. West started his engine and drove slowly. He had no idea where he was going, but eventually he found himself outside Samuel's building. The shock of being fired was replaced by rage, and he dashed into Dashiell's office, bursting through the door without knocking. He approached the surprised woman's desk and exclaimed, "I hope you're pleased. Your little plot has just got me fired. Did they fire you? Why?" "Yeah, hatchet face. Norton just fired me. They'll send me severance compensation in the mail." "That's great," she exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "Wes, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with those words." She raced out of the office and down the corridor, perplexed by her reaction. Wes strolled over to the futon and lay down on it. He felt fatigued now that the adrenaline had left his system. He was almost half asleep when Das arrived. She approached and sat down next to him. "Wes, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I anticipated Phase 2 would be contentious, but I didn't expect your firm to act so quickly." She reached out and took his hands. Hers? "That was the worst, Wes, I promise. Tomorrow we'll let everything settle before launching Phase 3. God, what happens now? No. Your arc will now begin to increase. You've reached the bottom. From here on out, things will get better. And that reminds me, according to my Uncle Winston, whatever you do, do not cash checks from your firm. Okay? You talked to your uncle about it, yes. And he was adamant. Do not sign anything from your firm without his permission." Wes stared at her blankly. "It's easy for him to say, but I'll run out of money shortly. Paying for a room in this crummy motel, eating out every day, and purchasing new clothes. Everything is located above ground." She frowned. "Right. I hadn't considered that." Then her expression brightened. "Hello, I know you can relocate here. Do you want me to live in your office?" "Sure. That is where I reside. There's an office through that door that I converted into a bedroom, and we made the toilet into a 3-piece bathroom. But I can't do it. I mean, where would I be?" He paused. "Don't worry about it. You can sleep on the futon until we figure out your predicament." She clasped his hands, sensing his indecision. "Spending money on a motel is a dumb idea. And now that you've been laid off, you'll probably spend the most of your time here anyhow, making it a lot more handy." When he did not respond, she continued, "Let's go out to supper and chat about it." She invited him to a little cafe for wine and dinner. He told her everything that had happened in his office. She listened to him sympathetically without saying anything. When they finished, she insisted on paying the check back in the car. She turned and gave him a bright glance. "You know what? We're not very far from your accommodation. Why don't we stop by there? You collect your belongings and check out, and I will drive you back to the office." He still had misgivings, but he was too exhausted to argue with her, so he let her take him to the motel. He didn't have much things, so it didn't take long to pay the motel charge and return downtown. She assisted him in converting the futon into a bed once he had moved his belongings inside her office. When she returned, he was surprised to see her wearing a long t-shirt with video game characters. "Is that everything you need?" she asked. He nodded, and she turned to leave. He stopped her. "Thank you for doing this. I'm delighted I'm not in this awful motel." She smiled. "I agree, Wes." After she switched off the overhead lights, he laid in the semi-darkness created by computer screensavers and the small LED lights on processors. He closed his eyes, and a wave of depression overcame him. What had happened with my life? I lost my marriage. I lost my home. I lost my job. My buddies have left me. And now I'm trying to sleep in someone else's office and on someone else's bed. What the hell did I do wrong? He tried to answer the question till he fell asleep. He awoke the next morning to find Dash at the office door with coffee and sweet buns. He was still in a down mood, but she quickly distracted him by asking him to explore various social media sites for any mention of him and his position. The search did not take long. Entering humiliated hubby into a search engine, Wes was astounded by the number of tweets, TikToks, Instagrams, Facebook links, and other mentions. Someone had even produced a Wikipedia entry, and he wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry when he realized how much information he'd discovered. Dash smiled embarrassingly. "I have to be honest with the United States. I spent much of yesterday adding photographs, comments, reviews, and links to ensure that others see your tale." When he frowned, she rushed to continue, "But it didn't take long on my end. The interviewer picked it up and began promoting your tale on their own. I also read comments about you on websites from various countries and languages." "Great," he mumbled rudely. "So I'm suddenly infamous all over the world." Even more upsetting for West was the hostility and even hatred with which Anonymous spoke out against him. Dozens of commenters advised him to do the world a favor by killing himself or something along those lines. "I'm going to have to hire a bodyguard before this ends." He grumbled and shook his head. Dash didn't allow him to dwell in self-pity. "The further you fall now, the higher you will rebound when you get back up," she promised. "I hope you are correct," he muttered dejectedly, "because right now I'm dropping like a rock." Marlene, seated at her computer in her Fair Oaks home, was reading various comments in response to the recent discoveries from gossip columnist Gertie, her countenance perplexed. She called her lover Jack. "This West thing has definitely gotten out of control. I just want to get rid of him, not ruin him. He has never hit me or done anything that these folks on the internet accuse him of. I nearly want to say something." "No," he replied forcefully. "You have to let everything evolve as it is. All this publicity will help your divorce go smoothly. In addition, you are likely to receive a better settlement. And by publicizing our relationship, we ensure that no one will say anything unfavorable. Following your awful encounter with West, our friends will tell you that you deserve a chance at some happiness. We could not have come up with a better scenario." "Do you honestly think so?" "Absolutely, baby. West has a large bullseye painted on his chest, and there are some people who want to take a shot at him. He will never recover from being shot at West." After lunch, Dash received a phone call, and when she discovered who it was, she turned it on speaker so West could hear. "Hello, Gary. It's nice to hear from you. Have you taken the most recent facts regarding the humiliated husband?" "Well," she inquired, winking at West's good reception girl, "that tale went viral all over the internet. This is the best thing you've ever sent me. I received 50,000 new subscribers in the last day. Do you have any additional information on the story?" "Excellent timing, girlfriend. I'm simply about to put some material together. I should be able to send it to you by the end of today. If you enjoy it, you can utilize it in tomorrow's show." "Really? What did you get this time? You won't believe it, but what if your humiliated spouse isn't such a nasty guy? Are you kidding me? Really?" Dash used such terms to outline the fresh information she had produced. When she finished, Dirty was overjoyed. "Oh, what a twist. My subscribers are about to go berserk. Tell me what. Let's split this into 2 episodes even further. Send them both to me as soon as possible so that I may begin advertising." When the phone call finished, Dash smiled and turned to face West. "Do you feel any better already? That girl is doing well. He liked it. However, we have yet to see how her subscribers react." He gave her a wry smile, though I must say I'm beginning to feel more optimistic. Dash spent the evening putting things together just how she wanted them. West continued to check various social media platforms for delayed reactions, but for the most part, he stayed out of Dash's way, allowing her to go about her business. She was finally satisfied. She uploaded the gift to Judy only after Gertie gave her a thumbs up in response to Dash, allowing her to relax and focus on West. "I'm not sure about you, but I'm starving. How about we order a pizza? I have some more beer in the refrigerator so we can relax and unwind. That sounds wonderful." When they finished eating, he stretched and gazed at his temporary companion with curiosity. "How did you and Gordy become such great friends? We met as freshmen at the California Institute of Technology." "California Institute of Technology?" "Yeah, looking at Gertie on YouTube, you would never think she used to be an electrical engineer at a high-tech business. How about you? I majored in computer science but never graduated. Something else happened, so I dropped out and never returned." He could see from the look on her face that she didn't want to get into details, so he asked another inquiry. "Where did you earn a moniker like Dash's? Did you go running or anything like that?" She shook her head, grinning. "Actually, Dash stands for Dashiell Hammett. My father has always enjoyed detective stories, particularly The Thin Man and The Maltese Falcon." West nodded. "Okay. How about Daniels? Where did it come from?" Her smile vanished. "Daniels is my jerk ex-husband's surname," she spit out. "Wow, I apologize. I did not mean to reopen an old wound." She shakes her head. "No, that's fine." She looked away. "When I started college, I was your typical rebellious, emotionally immature girl eager to get out of gritty Sacramento. Joey. This was his name. Was a very wicked boy. And I was naive enough to become engaged with the kind. He got me into all sorts of bad things, parties, and other nonsense that kids that age do. But I was crazy over him. When the school year was almost ended, the notion of separation became too much for us, so we rushed away. My father was furious, but he really wanted me to obtain my degree. So he found us an apartment in Pasadena and assisted with expenditures. I had no idea Joey was spending the majority of the money on negative things. I also had no idea that he was spending the rest of his money on a whore he found. But everything became evident the day Joey strolled in on us with that dyed blonde and announced that he and she were going. West saw that lady appeared to be undergoing dental surgery. She said, "Looking at Dash's face, it really hit me." I kind of turned to the dark side. There was no money. I had to pay rent, so I lived on the streets for a bit. Luckily, my father discovered me and brought me home. It took a long time, but I recovered and got a job that allows me to support myself. So here I am. That sounds dreadful, Dash. I'm very sorry you had to go through that, and I am even more sorry for bringing it up. No, it's fine. It was a long time ago. I got over it. She paused. And if you're wondering why I preserved his last name, it's because I didn't want that jerk to be able to erase me. I wanted my last name to serve as a constant reminder of what he did. She gave a disdainful gesture. If it were all over again, I'd probably go back to the last name Samuels, but I'm used to it now, so whatever. It must have been quite difficult for you. Yeah, but I honestly believe I understand what you've been through. He stood up, walked over, and hugged her impulsively. She reciprocated after a minute of uncertainty. So aren't we a couple? She laughed sadly as they separated. The next day, when the latest edition of Gurney's Gossip was due, the two of them sat in front of Dash's large flat screen, West frustrated by the long loading time. Dash told him, however, that it was most likely due to network congestion. Those tiny hints she shared on Instagram must have sparked a lot of attention. Finally, the familiar image of Gertie at her fencing table appeared, and it was clear that the network celebrity was fighting to hold back her excitement. "I've got fantastic news for you today. Gossip loves." The story of the humiliated husband has taken a surprising new turn. An image emerged on the screen behind her, captured by the doorbell camera in front of West's house. Here's the house you've all seen before, the house of the humiliated husband. And behold, a silver BMW drives into the driveway before entering the garage. Grody paused abruptly, but not before revealing the license plate. "Who does this car belong to?" you inquire. A press image of Jack McKenzie, the head of the McKenzie agency, came on the screen. Isn't it nice? Mr. Jack McKenzie, whose marketing firm purchases so much art from the wife of a humiliated husband, has come to console the poor woman and assist her with her divorce. But wait, let's go back and check the time and date on this surveillance film. She pointed forcefully at the corner of the screen behind her. That was 3 months before Mrs. Hubby filed for divorce. And guess what? Mr. McKenzie appears to have comforted the distraught lady multiple times per week during that time. Behind her, the TV displayed one image after another of a sports car pulling into the garage. I'm not criticizing Mrs. Hubby for flirting behind her husband's back. What I'm saying, gossip enthusiasts, is that there appears to be a lot more to this tale than we realized. And even better, Gossip Girl Gertie has more dirt to share with you the next time. Check out this YouTube channel for our next stunning revelation. Gertie went on to the next issue, and Dash shut off the program. Both spontaneously rose to their feet and applauded. Wes embraced his partner tightly. "That was great," he said. "You are fantastic." He stared at her for a moment, as if seeing her for the first time, before leaning in for a kiss. After a brief pause, she enthusiastically replied to his kiss. In an instant, the mood shifted from exhilaration to passion. But no sooner had the temperature increased than there came a knock on the office door, and the couple hurriedly backed away. Just as Winston Samuels entered, the secretary stuck her head in. "I hope I am not interrupting. I was seeking for—" "There you are, Mr. Hardaway. Mr. Samuels was hoping to speak with you, if you aren't busy." "No, of course not," West responded quickly. "I'd be delighted to meet with Mr. Samuels." West gave Dash one last glance before following the matron down the hall to the lawyer's office. Winston Samuels was already waiting for him, leading the young man into his office. "Given that you had chosen our business to represent you, I was very curious when my niece informed me of your dismissal." He inclined his head to the west. "I assume she relayed my advice to not pay checks from your former job or sign any other documents they may send you." "Yes, sir. She passed it along, but I didn't." "Good. the attorney went on, because that could imply consenting to a deal, and you do not want to accept any of their offers at this time. Okay. West spoke hesitantly. It is my understanding that you were fired for violating the firm's spousal abuse policy. Is correct? Yes, sir. My former supervisor made this obvious to me. Is there anyone else who can confirm this? I can certainly give you a half-dozen names of other people who were present and heard what she said. Great. Assume that is what happened. I've prepared a lawsuit on your behalf against your previous employer for wrongful termination. You did not offend your spouse. West shook his head emphatically, and they had no reason to believe differently save for vicious gossip. Furthermore, the way you were publicly sacked and removed off the premises harmed your reputation. The corporation should also be held accountable for this. Finally, after reviewing the online version of your organization's employee handbook, I found that your supervisor did not follow company procedures when firing you. As a result, I believe you have a strong basis for legal action. With your permission, I would like to bring a lawsuit against the firm for $10 million in aggregate damages. Does that seem fair to you? West sighed. $10 million? Yes, sir. That seems extremely fair to me. Do you believe we can acquire that much money? The older man smiled. I believe we have a strong chance, but we'd have to go to court for it. That would probably take 3 to 5 years. West lowered his face, but Samuels added, the firm will not want the litigation to generate negative publicity. And according to my secretary, your standing in the court of public opinion is improving, which they will be aware of as well. I believe they might be readily persuaded to agree to an out-of-court settlement for roughly half that sum, in addition to my legal fees, of course. $5 million will do just nicely for me, West replied quickly. The smile became wider. I hoped you would think so. So if you sign this form, I'll start the process. West signed the document, stood up to depart, and then turned around. Mr. Samuels, how would this influence my divorce proceedings? Frankly, I do not want Marlene to benefit from it. The lawyer answered, I don't think you need to worry. All of these occurrences happened long after the divorce petition was filed. Furthermore, your wife's conduct contributed to your wrongful dismissal, albeit indirectly. Under those circumstances, she should not be eligible for assistance. West was overjoyed at the news and dashed back down the hall to Dashiell's office. When he entered, she was leaning over her keyboard. He attempted to tell her about it, but she interrupted him. Can it wait? Yes, I have a deadline for another client and a lot of work to do, without awaiting his reaction. She returned to the monitor. He stood for a few moments. He was disappointed that he was unable to share his good news. But what bothered him the most was the sense that Dash was avoiding him. Eventually, he cleared his throat. I suppose I'll go for a walk, he told her. When he received no response, he turned and exited the room, walking down to the street. The young man moved toward the Capitol Mall. When he arrived, he headed west and walked along the sidewalk until he reached the Tower Bridge, where he paused and gazed at the Sacramento River. However, his thoughts were not focused on the view. Damn it, I should not have been so aggressive with her. No wonder she wants nothing to do with me right now. Nonetheless, it appeared to me that she had replied to me. I do not know. Maybe it was simply sympathy. Perhaps she was simply trying to be polite to her poor, horny hubby. He was casually watching the workmen put cargo onto the Delta King dinghy. Why did I kiss her? She is unlike any other girl I have ever been interested in. There is something about her, though. But it doesn't matter. She plainly dislikes me. I am just a customer, nothing more. When he returned to Samuel's building, she was still working, and the space between them remained unchanged for the remainder of the evening. Marlene and West walked the Capitol Mall. Marlene confronted Jack McKenzie in his workplace. When he responded, she did not even say hi. Have you ever watched that blasted gossip show on YouTube? She demanded. How the hell did they acquire footage of you pulling into my garage? I thought you claimed you were careful. I was careful, he said. One of those damn video callers must have seen me. How was I to know? They save everything. They keep records for several months. I'd like to know who made her look for it. I wonder whether West was somehow involved. Wes, are you out of your mind? You're talking about the person everyone refers to as the humiliated husband. Do you believe he could do that to himself? Besides, he knew nothing. I know, but it has to be somebody. Yeah, I wouldn't mind shooting whoever it was. If we could find out, it would completely change our plans. I understand, and I absolutely despise it. Her tone altered. You know what might help me feel better? Why don't you come over to spend some time with me? He paused. I'm not sure if that is a good idea. I do not want to appear in another video. Perhaps we should take it easy for a time till everything calms down. If you arrive after dark, the cameras will be ineffective, especially if you switch off your headlights before pulling into the driveway, and now that Wes is gone, there's no reason not to come at night. I'll make sure you don't regret it, she added with a seductive voice. What time? He inquired as he passed through the garage door. Marlene emerged from her bedroom, and the sight of her made Jack stop. She was dressed in all black, and he looked at her with lust and fear. She held the pruning shears in her hand. You kept me waiting, she said accusingly. I apologize, he asked pleadingly. I couldn't help it. Do you know what you need to do? Go into the bedroom? She barked. Yes, mistress, he responded, rushing to do her bidding. Wes. The next day, Dash and Wes's relationship appeared to be back to normal. In fact, as the time came to watch the latest episode of Gardez Gossip Girl, Wes noticed Dash becoming increasingly animated. When the loading screen appeared, she beckoned Wes over to the large flat-screen monitor to join her. Following the customary introduction, Gertie appeared on screen. Her excitement was evident. I know many of you have been captivated by the twists and turns of the humiliated husband saga. On the last show, I revealed that my wife, Marlene, is not so faithful. Her image on the screen behind Gertie depicted an ongoing affair with advertising executive Jack McKenzie. Could this be the true reason she kicked her helpless husband out of the house? After all, Marlene obtained a protective order against her husband. Could it be that the cruelty of her humiliated husband drove her into the arms of another man? Gordy wanted to find out as well, so she checked the police records for her humiliated husband. There have been no convictions, complaints, or calls to the police. How strange that Mrs. Hubby wanted to further humiliate her husband, making him a social pariah. But if so, why did Honorable Judge Harold Chalmers issue a restraining order against Hubby? Could have convinced his honor to take such serious action. Could it be that Judge Chalmers is about to run for re-election behind her? A political advertisement appeared on the screen. The caption reads, "Re-elect Judge Chalmers in November." It could also be Gert. He went on to say that 3 weeks before the humiliated husband was served with the restraining order, the judge received a generous campaign contribution from a prominent local advertising agency behind Gertie. The official list of campaign donors was displayed on the screen. The entry McKenzie Advertising Agency $10,000 was highlighted in red. Gertie tilted her head and winked at the camera. I am not saying the judge acted because Jack McKenzie, Mrs. Hubby's secret lover, paid him. You can draw your own conclusions from that. What I'm saying is that I believe we all owe an apology to poor, humiliated Hubby. Wow. Just wow. West was ecstatic as Dash turned off the video. That should cause Marlene and her boyfriend to worry. He leaned out to hug Dash but held back. Nonetheless, his appreciation was clear. Dash, you are a genius. That seemed convincing to me. Thank you, she said. However, the big question remains, how will the interview react? She grinned at him. Why don't you go get some lunch for us? We'll have lots of information by the time you return. When Wes appeared with a bag from the deli run, I beckoned him over. Come look at this, she urged, pointing to her computer as he looked over her shoulder. He noticed that she was going through an infinite list of comments, many of which included emojis and GIFs. What are these? He asked. She answered smugly. Is the hashtag humiliated hubby on Twitter? Gurney's episode produced a flood of reactions, and that's just one part of the reaction. Gertie's show is getting its own reactions on YouTube, followed by more on Instagram and elsewhere. It appears that many people have already viewed the previous segment. Can you believe it? And now they're taking opposing positions. She halted and looked at the screen. So far as I can determine, Hubby's squad leads Mrs. Hubby's team by approximately 70% to 30%. West hesitated for a time, attempting to understand what was said. He quickly glanced at the screen. Wait a minute. Are you claiming that 30% of the crowd supports Marlene? She waved her hand dismissively. Do not worry about it. You'll always have crazies. As the saying goes, Haters will hate. What matters is that you went from zero to hero among the great majority of Twitter users. He stared at her and shook his head in appreciation. That is exactly what happened, as you mentioned. I'd never have believed it. But I think your storyline is really working. He looked at her with admiration. You know, you are simply great. He approached the girl without thinking, but she backed away. Listen, Wes, what occurred to us the other day? Yes, that. I just think we need to calm down a little. I know we're going to live together, but I'm not sure I'm ready. Dash, it's okay, I completely get it. I did not have to do it, I simply got caught up in the moment. She gave him a doubtful look. I don't mean it, no, seriously, he interrupted. I got it. Wes's phone rang before they could say anything else, and he looked at it. His face had an odd expression. The call came from a number he had never expected to see again, his previous supervisor, Edith Norton. Wes, she said in a more sweet voice than he had expected. I'm so happy I caught you. Could you please come to the office and meet with me? I've got some critical information for you. I do not know, Edith. We didn't part on good terms the last time I saw you. I understand, Wes, and I apologize, but some things have happened here that I believe you should be aware of. I promise that it will be worth your time. He began to refuse her, then remembered the awkwardness between Dash and himself. Okay, he told her. I will be there soon. When he pulled up to his former workplace building, he was greeted considerably differently than the last time. The receptionist greeted him kindly before shocking him by asking for an autograph. As he was signing the autograph, Edith Norton came out to greet him and walked him back to her office. He spotted the staff's heads peeping out from behind their cubicles like prairie dogs on the Great Plains. Let me get right to the point, Wes, the woman began as soon as he sat in her office. The last time we met, there were a lot of concerns that sadly ruined the mood. I wish I could take back some of the things I said. She looked at him to see how he was taking everything, but he maintained a serene expression on his face. Is it true that your work at the firm has always been good? No. Excellent, in fact. We hate to lose talent. We've all missed you here, therefore I'd like to offer you your position back. When he didn't respond, she nervously corrected herself. I am not referring to your previous job. We would like to give you a promotion to director. He remained mute, and she hurried to continue. And not at your old wage, of course. No. You will receive a 10% raise to reflect your new title. He continued to stare at her, making her agitated. Did I say 10%? I intended to say 15%. That would put you in the top quartile of director's pay range. And did I mention severance pay? Have you received? We want you to keep it as a signing bonus, just like professional sportsmen do. What say you, Wes? I have all the papers right here. If you sign this disclaimer, you will have a new employment waiting for you once you have completed your 3 weeks of paid vacation. Of course. He sat upright in his seat. So, Miss Norton, you admit that I violated the rule against spousal abuse, which I did not do. Do you acknowledge that my termination did not follow the processes outlined in the employee handbook? Wes, that's all in the past. There's no need to go over what, in retrospect, was a ridiculous misunderstanding. Let us focus on the future. Your promotion, pay increase, and I failed to note your eligibility for the bonus plan. Please sign these papers. And Wes stood up and interrupted her. Listen attentively, Edith Norton. You may stick the raise, pay rise, and new title right up your skinny micromanager ass. I'll see you at the firm or in court with those words. He dashed out of her office, leaving his former employer with a flushed face and a spray of spit as he returned down the corridor to the exit. He believed he heard applause from one of the booths, but there were no heads visible. After lunch, Winston Samuels called Wes and questioned him about his visit to his former employer. Tell him you made no obligations, the lawyer said, and please tell him you did not sign anything. When Wes repeated what Edith Norton said, the stern old man smiled. It wasn't wise to go in there, young man, especially without a lawyer, but I understand why you did. At any rate, I don't believe you've caused any harm. The fact that your former boss fought so hard to get you back is a really good sign, in my opinion. Anyway, given her incompetent attempt to bribe you, I expect to hear from their lawyer sooner rather than later. When Dash returned, he appeared more comfortable, so they decided to order supper on the house while slicing Thai food from cardboard boxes. Dash asked him about his visit to his former workplace, and West joyfully recalled his encounter with his former boss. From there, it seemed reasonable to inform Dash about the litigation, but West didn't want to appear to be attempting to impress her, so he avoided discussing the cost of the suit or the prospect of a rapid settlement. Nonetheless, Dash appeared pleased for him. "After everything you've been through, West, I hope you take something away from this. I believe you deserve some luck for a change." The talk ended, and when he turned around, he noticed her staring at him intently. "What is the matter, Dash?" She hesitated before responding. "You inquired about my past existence, West. Can I ask about yours?" "Sure, ask. How did you end up with Marlene?" He rolled his eyes. "I met her during a Chamber of Commerce function. She approached, introduced herself, and we talked for the remainder of the evening. I called her the next day, and when we met again, we realized we had just hit it off. It was great. Everything I enjoyed. She enjoyed everything that I liked. She liked. We were perfect for one another." "Nope." "And when did you start discussing anything more permanent?" He thought for a moment before responding. "She may have spoken first, but I was the one who wanted to settle down. I couldn't imagine someone as attractive and brilliant could be so compatible. I didn't want to let her slip away. So you didn't know her very well. So I thought I did. We were chatting about the past, and she revealed that she was divorced when we started dating. He appeared like a jerk to me, and I thought she made the correct decision by breaking up with him. How long did you two date before getting engaged?" He bent his head in embarrassment, to tell the truth. "We were married 6 months after meeting." He sent a pleading look at her. She informed me she wasn't interested in the social trappings of marriage. She claimed it was nothing more than commerce taking advantage of inexperienced lovers. She wanted to get away, which suited me well. So, shortly after her divorce was finalized, we went to the judge of the peace and got married. It all seemed quite exciting and romantic at the time. She sat in silence, reflecting on what he had told her. Finally, curiosity took control. "So, why exactly did you want to know about her?" "I was just interested about how you two ended up together." She stood, yawned, and stretched. "I'm so exhausted. I believe I'll get to bed early. I will see you in the morning." He glanced at the entrance to her room as she vanished inside. "What is this all about?" he muttered to himself the next morning. Wes's phone rang early. Mr. Hardaway arrived. A woman's voice. "This is Winston and Samuel's office. Mr. Samuels would like to meet with you this morning." "Yes, sure." "Well," she responded, standing up, "we could complete it in about an hour." "Okay, perfect. I will be there." He stood up and lightly knocked on Dash's door. She had evidently been up for some time since she was fully dressed when he opened the door. "Good morning, miss," she greeted him. "So who was on the phone for you?" "That was your uncle's secretary. He wants to see me in an hour. Is it allowed to use your shower?" He lowered his sight towards himself. "I believe your uncle would appreciate it." Dash waved him off and dashed back inside to shower, shave, and change into fresh clothes when he emerged. He was relieved to find that Dash had bought coffee and biscuits. As they consumed the pastries, she smirked and told him that a good breakfast requires 2 components, caffeine and carbohydrates. West walked down the hall to the lawyer's office and found the receptionist already waiting for him. "He's expecting you," she assured him, smiling. Winston Samuel's expression was harsh as he invited West to sit in front of the enormous antique wooden desk. He said, "I've been negotiating with representatives of your former employer," without further explanation. "I must report that we were unable to reach an agreement on the $5 million payment you and I discussed." West could hardly help but be disappointed. The lawyer's face lit up with a faint smile. "However, I was able to negotiate a settlement of $6.5 million with them. I hope that's satisfactory." $6 million? You are kidding, exclaimed West. "They will also cover my fees, which is great for you because they are not insignificant. Their sole condition is that you sign a non-disclosure agreement and refrain from making any public statements regarding the transaction or the firm. I hope that is good with you." West grinned. "For $6.5 million. I will gladly remain silent now and forever." The lawyer motioned with his hand to stop his client. "Before you start spending that money, keep in mind that both the IRS and the state of California will receive their fair portion after taxes. The amount you receive will be roughly half of the total amount." West considered for a moment before smiling. $3.5 million is far more than I expected. A higher figure would have been preferable, but I won't complain. Then his expression became more sober, regardless of the amount. I would prefer that you don't tell the rest of your family. The older man gazed at him triumphantly. I never disclose a client's business with anyone unless my client asks me to. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Before returning to the antisocial network headquarters, Wes checked his phone and placed a quick call. Then he rushed back. Dash waited with interest. So what did Uncle Winston say? He managed to maintain a straight expression. Do you have any plans tonight? He inquired carelessly. No, why? She replied, perplexed by the shift of topic. Good. Then I want to convey my gratitude. All you've done for me is invite me to supper. Have you ever visited the Firehouse restaurant? I'd love to join you, West, but the Firehouse is one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Wouldn't you rather go somewhere else? He grinned. Well, I've already made reservations. Furthermore, I don't believe it's too expensive to express gratitude to someone who has done a lot for me, and I certainly don't think it's too expensive for a man who is about to receive a speedy and favorable verdict in his lawsuit. She jumped with joy as she realized what had happened. Yes, congratulations, I'm very delighted for you. Then she drew away from him, her look becoming apprehensive. Tonight there's a fire station. God, I have nothing to wear and need to get my hair done. And, no, you do not. What don't you need? She inquired in confusion. Do not modify your hair. Why? I always assumed you despised them. It took me some time to get used to them, but now, they suit you now. Okay, she replied hesitantly. But at those comments, she backed away from him and dashed back into the bedroom. A few minutes later, she reappeared. I've still got some shopping to do. Damn it, West Hardaway. I'm not even sure I remember how to do this. I haven't shopped anywhere except stores in years. She found her car keys and put them in her pocket. Stay here. She gave a command. If someone needs anything, please take care of it as best you can, and let them know I'll be back as soon as possible. With those comments, she raced out the door, forcing him to close it behind her because she was already rushing down the hall. When she returned, it was already dark and she was carrying several suitcases. West allowed her through the door, and she swiftly fled into her bedroom. He checked the time and decided he should also get dressed. He put on the only suit he'd been able to rescue from the house, along with a good shirt and formal shoes. He could hear something behind him. So what do you think? Turning around, he spotted her standing in the doorway wearing an ankle-length black halter dress. He looked at her dashboard. Is this you? Asked in amazement. Her face fell. Don't you like it? No, no, he yelled, racing over to her. You look fantastic, like a model. I've never seen you in such an amazing gown before. Relieved? She grinned slightly. I feared it was too much, but it looks great in the store. He took a step back to have another look at it. The black cloth contrasted with her hair, and the silver high-heeled heels rounded out the look. You're so tall, he exclaimed, and the clothing flatters your body. He averted his attention to his clothes. Now I'm thinking if I'm good enough to go with you. She chuckled, grabbed his hand, and kissed his cheek. I would have told you if I thought so. So why don't you call us a cab? Later, as they were finishing dinner on the Firehouse's brick patio, Dash sipped from her wine glass. Her face became serious. Wes, do you recall how I drew away from you the other day? He chatted cheerfully, but when she asked a question, his smile faded. I remember, but that was my fault. She shook her head, interrupting him. It was not us. That was me. She looked down at the table. Remember when I talked about my marriage and how difficult it was for me? It really hurt me. She stared up at him almost helplessly. I haven't been in a relationship with anyone since my ex left me. In fact, I haven't gone on a date since then. His discomfort was clear. I apologize, Dash. I didn't mean to put any strain on you. I understand you didn't. I basically acted automatically on autopilot. She gave a half smile. You know, when I first met you, I assumed you were just another dumb husband whose wife had abandoned him. But as I came to know you better, I realized there is more to you than that. We don't simply have bad luck with ex-partners. You are both wise and entertaining. And romantic. Perhaps most importantly, you are loyal. Be loyal to both your wife and yourself. That is really essential to me. She flushed and lowered her gaze. I suppose what I mean is that if you wanted to kiss me again, I wouldn't run away this time. He stared at her triumphantly and reached across the table to grab her hand before he could say anything. The waiter approached them. West stared at him blankly. "I believe we'll forego dessert." Dash flushed again. Marlene. While West and Marlene dined outside, Marlene attempted to contact Jack Mackenzie in an angry tone. When he eventually answered her call, she reacted angrily. "What's this crap about bribing Judge Chalmers to get me a protective order? I thought you mentioned that the judge was your friend. Do not be naive, Marlene. In politics, friend is simply another term for sponsor. When I went to ask him for a restraining order, he made it plain that doing what I wanted would require a major act of friendship on his part. But it doesn't matter anymore," he mumbled. "What exactly are you talking about? After word spread about us, the agency's directors held a meeting today and booted me out. How can they do this? It is your agency." "Yes, but the agency's bylaws state that they can, which they did. To top things all, the California Department of Revenue is sending an auditor to our office to review our bookkeeping. I'm completely screwed." "Jack, I'm very sorry, baby." "Yes, but you are sorry. A losing lottery ticket is currently worth the same to me. So how about you forget my phone number while I try to get out of this nightmare?" With that, he hung up the phone. "Shit. What will I do now?" she murmured to herself. "Wes, are you certain this is where you want to go?" the Lyft driver inquired before dropping Wes and Dash off near Samuel's building. His two passengers were too focused on each other to notice him waving hello to the night watchman. They ran to the elevator and climbed to the 6th story, embracing each other tightly. After she let them into Dash's office apartment, he reached for her again, but she fought him off. She told him to wait here before leaving for her bedroom. "I'll only be a minute." He was looking at his smartphone when he heard her voice behind him. "You can enter." He rushed to her bedroom door and came to a halt, taken aback by what he saw. Several candles illuminated the room, and Dash stood at the center of their warm light. They had a great time that night. The following morning, he awoke early and laid on his back, contemplating. After a few minutes, he got up and dressed, taking care not to wake her. He then discreetly left the house. When he returned, Dash was already awake and getting dressed. When he went through the door, she glanced at him with concern. "What's the problem, Wes?" she asked. "Where have you gone? I just needed to go for a stroll and ponder for a while." "What had you been thinking about?" she inquired, attempting to hide her concern. He walked over and sat across from her. He wore a solemn expression. "This entire ordeal of losing my wife, home, and work has gotten me wondering about the future. Everything seemed so obvious and uncomplicated before. Now I'm questioning what I want to do, where I want to live, and everything." He noticed her uncertainty and attempted to explain. "You see, I'm not originally from Sacramento. My father was in the Army and stationed in Fort Collins when I was born. I grew up in Colorado Springs. After my father's heart attack, we relocated here because my mother had family in California. Now that she is gone, I don't have any family here. Actually, I discovered this morning that I had no ties to Sacramento anymore." He picked up his cell phone. "My realtor texted me saying she expects an offer on the house any day now." He stopped sipping the coffee she had poured for him and didn't notice Dash's look. "I lost my job, of course," he said. "Not that I particularly enjoyed it. Thanks to your uncle's compensation from me, I have some time before I have to hunt for another one, and when the divorce is finalized, that will be my last association. Not only Marlene, but also Sacramento." He shrugged. "It's not an awful city, but it's unique, if you get what I mean." She managed to nod, but her face looked like a flower about to wilt. "I've been thinking about this, and I believe I'm going to leave. Begin fresh somewhere else. Maybe I'll travel to the Pacific Northwest. It should be wonderful there regardless." He paused uneasily. "I apologize, Dash. I realize I'm not very good at this. I'm trying to say, is there any chance you'd join me?" She was expecting the worst, so it took her a moment to return to her senses. Do you want me to come with you? For how long?" He appeared uneasy. "So, as long as you want?" "Really? But how long do you want me to stay with you?" "Yep." "Really? I do not want you to ever depart." She gasped, wrapped her arms around his neck, and refused to let go for a long time. Finally, he unclasped her hands and moved away. "I understand it's a lot to ask. Hurry to quit your family and your job. And you don't know me very well. Just shut up." She made an interruption. "Wesley Hardaway, your only issue is that you don't understand when someone says yes to you using such terms." She kissed him again, and he understood she didn't need to be persuaded. For the following few days, the lovers lived in a virtual bubble around each other, seemingly unaware of the presence of others. However, the other females on the floor saw the change in their connection and found it amusing. Even the two boys recognized what was going on and started rolling their eyes every time they saw the pair. But finally, reality intervened, driving both of them out of the bubble. West had to consult with Winston Samuels multiple times about their divorce. Marlene suddenly became rational, and the concerns that threatened to postpone the divorce were swiftly handled. West was relieved that their breakup went smoothly. To avoid waiting, all they needed to do was finish the sale of their property. Wes arranged for Winston to conduct the closure on his behalf. Winston also created documents for West to sign as part of the settlement with his accounting company. West was overjoyed with the results, but he chose not to say anything to Dash, at least not immediately. Dash, in turn, had multiple clients to work for. The most important of these was her father. She cautiously went to his office to inform him of her plans to leave with West. "Dash, are you certain you want to do this?" he asked. "I can't help but remember what occurred when you ran away with Joey. I just do not want you to be harmed again, that is all." She tensed, bracing for a clash. "It is not the same at all, Father. I'm a lot older and more cautious with my emotions. Besides, West is the absolute opposite of Joey. There is no wild impulsiveness, wandering eye, or drinking issue. When we went out to dinner a few nights ago, we only had a few glasses of wine with our meal." "I know," her father answered, startling her. "I examined it." When she grimaced, he asked, "What do you think?" "I was going to allow that guy get so close to you without checking him out. I nearly lost you once. I'm not going to take the chance again." She began to object, but was interrupted. "Wait, you haven't heard what I discovered yet?" He smiled encouragingly at her. "Anyway, everything I've learned about him supports what you've just said. He's tough, loyal, clever, and hardworking, regardless of what. That harpy, where he worked, stated that the other employees at his firm liked and respected him. And that is not all, Dash. He was a loyal and devoted husband. The only thing I can criticize him with is being extremely naive toward Marlene. But if a man may be incorrect, let it be in favor of faith in his leaves, cynicism, and skepticism of people like myself. In any case, I believe you have chosen a good candidate. I would hate for you not to be here, but if you choose to accompany him, I will bless you." "Papa!" she cried, throwing herself over her father's neck. He hugged her hard, fully aware that it had been a long time since she had called him daddy, as he released her and she returned to her chair. He pointed to where the law offices were. "I'm delighted you two won't have any money issues, unlike Joey. However, I would hate to see you go out of business. You're quite good at it." "I understand. I depend on you perhaps more than you realize." She laughed. "Just because I'm traveling with Wes doesn't mean I'll stop working. Basically, I can run my firm from anywhere as long as I have a laptop and a fast internet connection." She grinned. "You're not getting rid of me so simply, Dash. I'm delighted to hear that." Then his smile faded. "I've discovered something else that I'd want to share with you, and Wes needs to hear it too. Perhaps he could join us." Puzzled, she went looking for West when the two of them returned. Trevor approached and sat on the edge of his desk. "I've learned some intriguing information that may affect you both. According to reports, your ex-wife's lover, Jack McKenzie, has been fired from his agency and is being investigated for probable tax fraud." West shrugged. "I'm not going to waste my tears on him, that is not all." Trevor continued. "I also discovered that he and Marlene are no longer dating. Furthermore, from what I gather, they no longer speak to each other." West Dash exchanged glances. "Okay," he replied forcefully. Dash stared at her father inquisitively. "This is all very intriguing, Dad, but why make such a huge deal?" The detective observed the couple standing in front of him. "It doesn't matter what happened. This is what might happen next. West, your future ex's plan failed. At this point, she has no chance of finding a new boyfriend or selling her work. I guess she'll try to reconcile with you. Which side, Dash? Good luck with it." West waved her off. "I would not touch that woman with a 10-foot pole either." Trevor nodded. "I understand, but do not underestimate her. If she wants to, she can put an end to your divorce swiftly. She can have her lawyers file objections, delaying the sale of the residence. She can ask the court for family counseling, which might take months. Dash informed me about your plans to leave town. You have to understand that Marlene might postpone all of this for a long amount of time. But why would she do this? West sneered. For one thing, the longer you wait to divorce, the longer she will have a place to live and a source of income. On the other hand, the delay allows her more time to try to reconcile with you. The longer you've been married, the more time she has to devise a new strategy. On the other hand, if she learns about your financial arrangement, she may extort money from you in exchange for granting a divorce. What a bitch, exclaimed West. Winston said, You don't know the half of it. Let me tell you what else I learned about her. When he finished telling them what his investigation had discovered, they were stunned as they headed back to Dash's antisocial network office. His face was white with rage. Dash was worried because she had never seen him that irritable. What will you do with me? She inquired, almost hesitantly. What I really want to do is strangle her, he said firmly. Seeing Dash's reaction, he quickly drew her in. Don't worry, baby. I would never do something like that. But after everything she's put me through, I'd like to repay her somehow. She stared at him thoughtfully. I suppose I know someone who could help us with that. He stared at her, bewildered, and then smiled. They both shouted, Curdy! Let me drop her a message to see if she'd be interested in another episode of the humiliated husband drama. She stated that the phone will respond in a matter of seconds. She read it, grinned, and turned the screen for West to read. I want it, I want it, I want it. Read the reply message. The two of them promptly got to work, converting the facts Trevor had discovered into a format Gerda could use on her show. They'd been working diligently for a few hours when Wes's cell phone rang. Dash noticed the name on the monitor and the enraged grimace that appeared on his face. She decided to go to his bedroom and offer him some privacy. However, even after the call appeared to be over, she could still hear the angry notes in Wes's voice. He told her that she walked back because you suspected it was Marlene. It appears like your father timed it correctly. She wants me to meet with her at our house tomorrow to finalize a few matters, which she says must be settled in person. She's also thrown a few signals, leading me to believe she actually wants to chat about a possible reconciliation. I told her I'd have to get back to her. The important question is how soon we can gather this information for Gertie, and when will she be able to show it on her channel? If we can get it to her today, I'm sure she'll want to work with it properly. It might mean a late night for us, but I believe it will be worthwhile. Let's do it. Okay, I'll let Gordy know about our intentions. Great, he said. I'll phone Marlene and tell her we can meet tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully, Gordy will have enough time. Dash smiled and picked up the phone. Based on her reaction, I don't think you should be concerned, Marlene. The next afternoon, Marlene was nervously inspecting herself in the mirror when West approached her in a lift car. She was astonished at first, but then understood that this could be beneficial to her. Worst case scenario, I will drive him back to his place. Best case scenario, he will spend the night. She calculated that by the time he got up on the porch, she would already be holding the door open, without realizing the irony of her actions. When he entered, she attempted to kiss him, but he resisted. Don't rush things, she warned herself. She motioned for him to sit on the couch in the living room, and she sat in the chair across from him. So, do you have the papers that we need to sign? He asked. I do, she said, spreading them across the coffee table. But first, I have something to tell you. West, I simply want to apologize to you. I've made some serious blunders and treated you extremely poorly. This entire divorce process is like waking up from a bad dream. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I was selfish and harsh, and I had no idea why. All I know is that I hope I could make things up to you. He began to speak, but she was quick to continue. I guess the idea of selling the house helped me recognize what had transpired. She smiled faintly at him. We had so many beautiful moments here when we were full of optimism for the future and affection for one another. I can't stand to lose that. She leaned forward, smacking her lips, a tear glinting in the corner of her eye. West, do you believe there's any way to regain that feeling? Cannot we start over? We don't have to sell our house, honey. If you were willing to try, I'd spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy as you deserve. He stared at her coldly. Let me get this right, Marlene. Do you want me to forgive you after cheating on me for an unknown period of time? Forget the restraining order you placed on me. Forget about confining me in my own home. Honey, I know I've mistreated you. I did terrible things that wounded you and ruined our friendship. I honestly cannot explain why I did such things. It's as if I've gone temporarily nuts. But certainly I have come to my senses. I've realized how good we were. I recall how enjoyable our life together can be. Please, sweetie, don't discard the good with the bad. He stared at her incredulously. Are you out of your mind? He hissed, and she flinched. Let me make things absolutely clear for you. I am an accountant. I deal with assets and liabilities, and you, Marlene, are a major liability in my life. The sooner I can get rid of you, the happier I will be. Now please hand me the paperwork I need to sign. I will go. And hopefully, it will be the last time I see you again. Shocked. She handed him the documents that the real estate agent had left behind while he took them. She watched a car drive up to the home, its engine still idling. He hurriedly signed out, stood up and proceeded to the door, while she looked for anything that could give her a shot at a connection with him. But before she could think of anything, he turned around and smiled cruelly. Have you heard about the gossipy Gertie? He asked. She couldn't control herself. She shivered. I think you should read her most recent program. You will find it quite interesting. With those comments, he opened the door and stepped out into the waiting automobile. Is everything okay? Asked Dash. He nodded and smiled. Everything is fine. When they drove away, Marlene dashed back to her computer, got into YouTube, and discovered the Goodies Gossip channel. She looked uneasily as Grody started her introduction. Then, behind her back, a computer-generated banner emerged on television. Hubby was humiliated. The remainder of the story. Hello, gossipers. Based on your tweets, you all want to know more about the humiliated husband and the not-so-decent wife. Well, Gertie has the most recent chapter of the story for you. As you may recall, Genetico did not seek a divorce due to spousal abuse. No, she wanted to leave the marriage so she could have an affair with her boyfriend. She even convinced her boyfriend to bribe a court into issuing a protective order against her unsuspecting husband in order to make him appear bad. Isn't it pretty chilling? But that is not all. He wanted to know more about this deceitful woman. So she did a bit with the assistance of several of her admirers. You know who you are. So guess what? Genetico was not an innocent caught up in a passionate relationship. It turns out that the entire marriage was a hoax that she pulled off. Not one, not two, not three, but 5 poor husbands. That's correct. Our hero was actually the 5th husband, but he had no idea. It appears that our smart Genetica, Mrs. Machiavelli, has devised a nice little plot. Mrs. Brown Machiavelli, Marlene's photograph, now occupied the entire background. She would select a suitable sucker, lure him into marrying her, and then divorce him once she found a more wealthy target. Mrs. Machiavelli repeated her small plot many times, perfecting her approach each time. Before our hero, she had utilized the blocking scheme on her husband to make her plan even more successful. She added a restraining order to her scheme, and it would have worked if Gurney's gossipy buddies had been involved. Do you know who you are? Hadn't heard of it. This time, it appears Mrs. Machiavelli's newest ploy has been foiled. Her prospect for husband number 6 is temporarily unavailable due to a tax audit. And how about spouse number 5? Our hero, one of his favorite gossip columnists, tells her he's off to the sunset with someone special. And from what I understand, he is no longer humiliated. Before we end up this story, I'd want to share one final piece of savory news with you. It appears that several furious ex-husbands in California would like to speak with Mrs. Machiavelli. It turns out that the first several times she ended her marriage, she didn't bother with a divorce. She allegedly took out the poor man's savings and then fled town. In closing, I'd want to offer some advice to Sacramento men. Beware of Mrs. Machiavelli. She is probably already looking for the next sucker. I mean, husband, if you fall for her, do not say I didn't warn you. Let me tell you about a certain Hollywood starlet. Who? No! Shrieked Marlene. No, no! She slammed the computer shut, cutting off Verdi's obnoxious voice. But before she could decide what to do next, her cell phone rang. Realizing it was one of her pals, she responded, "Hello, Marlene. Was the voice on the line? Or should I say hello, Mrs. Machiavelli?" Throwing the phone across the room, Marlene shouted, "God, I need to get out of town." West stared at Dash after only a short distance along the I-5 freeway. I was considering using the interstate instead. Why don't we take 101 and drive along the coastline? How's that for an idea? A relaxing drive down the seaside roadway. Along the road, you'll find charming inns and coastal communities. It sounds scenic and lovely. Let's do it. He stretched out to squeeze her palm. Sure. The travel to Seattle will take much longer, but we aren't in a rush, so as long as we arrive before our money run out, we'll have to hunt for work while there. He stared at her strangely. I don't think we need to worry about that, darling. And suddenly it struck him. Yeah. I never informed you about the compensation I received, did I? You mentioned it was good. He reddened. Okay, quite decent. $6.5 million. Her jaw dropped open. What? However, after Uncle Sam and the state government receive their part, it will be only half that amount. She was stunned. That is wonderful. Yes, why didn't you say something earlier? I didn't want you to think I was using the agreement to make you like me. She rolled her eyes as he hurried to continue. Besides, that is not social media money. I mean, it's not even close to what he makes in a year. She gave him a harsh look. Wesley Hardaway, I don't care about it. And as for the internet, let me worry about it. My job is to utilize social media to meet the demands of my clientele. Her eyes sparkled as she reached for his zipper. She added, Your job is to take care of my needs. Do you believe you can manage it? He smiled cheerfully. I can handle it, Daniels. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired.